Am I the only one that cringed a little bit when we heard that second reading? You know, the one about, hey, sacrifices and offerings, I didn't want, no sin offerings. Anybody cringe about that? Kind of look at what we're doing here. The sacrifice of the Mass, the sin offerings, sacrament of reconciliation, kind of makes me a little bit nervous, right? Not nearly as nervous as what we hear in Matthew 7, where people are coming and saying, hey, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we drive out demons in your name? Didn't we do all of this in your name? And Jesus says, hey, I do not know you. Get away from me, you evil ones. It's like, oh my gosh. That makes me kind of take a gulp here, because here I am speaking for God, which is prophesying. But here's the thing with that message, right? It's saying not that those things are not important. They're just not enough. They're just not enough. In our second reading, Paul tells us about doing God's will. And so what is God's will if it's not attending Mass and reconciliation and prophesying and doing great deeds? What is it? And I think Jesus tells us about that as well, a little bit further down in Matthew 25, where he says it's about feeding the hungry. It's about visiting the sick. It's clothing the naked. And wait for it, welcoming the strangers. See, it's not enough to do those things if we don't connect with each other. And I think that's the message there. Now look, we're just 6 days away from Christmas, right? And what does that mean? Families and friends coming together, right? Exchanging gifts and crowded masses, right? And some of these visitors that are going to come to Mass, right, they're from out of town. Some of these visitors are making their semi-annual trip to church. Some are going to be Catholic. Some are not. Some are going to have strong faith. Some will have none, right? But here's the thing, right? There's opportunity there. In our first reading, we hear that Bethlehem was so small and insignificant that they didn't even get counted among the clans of Judah. But look who came out of Bethlehem, right? And we're celebrating next week the birth of Jesus, right? Jesus comes to us as a small baby, appears to be very humble, very powerless, right? But look what he turned out. We chose December 25th to celebrate the birth of Jesus, not because we think that's when he was born, but one of the reasons we chose that day was because it is the shortest day of the year, or at least the Romans thought it was the shortest day of the year. And it was very symbolic of Jesus coming, very small baby, small light into the world that will grow and grow and grow, just like our days grow longer and longer from Christmas on. So I think this message is really truly about don't waste any opportunity to connect with others, no matter how small it is, right? We tend to come to church early on Christmas, right? Because there's going to be a crowd and you got to make sure you get your space. People get here half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour early, depending on the Mass. And what I'm saying is don't waste that. Don't waste that opportunity sitting in the pew, ignoring your neighbor, ignoring the stranger, right? Connect with them. Listen to their stories. Listen to the stories around the dinner table, at church, in the back of church. Listen to people's stories, the people we know as well as the people we don't know. And when we listen to their stories, we're going to learn a lot. We'll learn a lot about them. We'll get a sense of how they connect with others, how they welcome their neighbors, right? How they love their neighbors, what's important to them, what's not important to them. You pay attention to their body language, it will tell you so much about what they believe in. And here's the great thing when that happens. When we listen to someone's story intently like that, we connect with them in a really solid and good way. And when we have that connection, first of all, by listening that way, even these people who say there are none, they may teach us something about loving neighbor, about feeding the sick. Who knows? But here's the other thing. Listening that way, as I said, allows us to connect in a really good way. And if it's done well, and we listen first, then they're likely to listen to our stories. And maybe they learn something. And who knows? Who knows where that leads over the year? It's a small little thing, just like the baby Jesus, right, that can grow into something much bigger. Not because of what we do, but because of what God does with that. And who knows what's going to happen next year? You know, maybe church stays more crowded all year long. But maybe the world just becomes a whole lot more loving all year long. Right? Look, I'm just trying to give us a very practical way to take action based on what we just prayed in the responsorial psalm. Lord, let us see your face and we shall be saved. Because if we connect with people that way, there's a good chance we will see the light of Christ burning in them much more brightly than if we're sitting there and we just kind of ignore our neighbors and just say, oh, I know who that person is. And who knows, when we see Christ burning that brightly in others, right? Crowded masses become the kingdom of God growing in front of our very eyes. That'd be pretty neat, huh? You know, we might also have the experience Elizabeth had when she saw Mary and heard Mary and Jesus leapt in her womb. Okay, we're not pregnant maybe, but what may happen is we feel our hearts leap with joy to be connected with someone else more deeply, to see Christ in them more deeply, more brightly. That'd be a great Christmas, won't it?